your host, Ryan Hensley.
What's going on, everybody? I'm back with Rohan on Thursday. Good to see you, Rohan. I had to cancel the show yesterday, man. I've been so busy, but I'm glad to be back, man. Thanks for being here, buddy.
And I'm glad, do the show with you. A nice just way to start your Thursday mornings, and definitely happy to chop it up and talk some Brock.
Yeah, man, we got a lot to talk about. The 49ers and Brock Purdy are breaking records left and right. So we're going to talk about some of those things. Mr. Blue Magic's going to pop on around 9:30. Tomorrow, I'm going to have the coach on. We were supposed to do it yesterday, but we're going to do it tomorrow. So tune in for that as well. If you're not yet, please like this video and subscribe to this channel as well as Rohan's channel. Rohan is also streaming on his channel. Make sure you guys go follow him, subscribe. Details in the description for that. Also, real quick, the Ryan G. Hensley Show is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Hensley for $100 deposit match. Blue Water Credit, that will fix your credit. Best credit company out there. Details in the description for that, as well as my real estate and mortgage and solar businesses. Hit me up if you need help with all of that. Wanted to push through with all of that, Rohan, because we got a lot to talk about. Real quick before we jump into it, I want to say hi to two of the regulars on the program. Nick Nice, what's up, buddy? As well as Red Jet Shell, who is here on a regular. We appreciate your guys' support and for being here. Sorry about yesterday, guys. If you're waiting for me, I forgot to push it and reschedule. It's my bad, but we got it worked out. So the thumbnail in the picture here, right here, is Steve Young and Joe Montana looking at their phone, a little concerned about some records that are being broken. They're obviously following me on Twitter, as you can tell, as well by the thumbnail. But anyways, man, they're talking about records today. There's a lot of records that could be broken or have already been broken as well. Let's talk about them. Let's go one at a time, man. I know you've done some preparation this morning, helping me out. I appreciate that because I am not prepared today. I've been so busy, but I do know that the 49ers are breaking records left and right, man. Give us one of those records.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about records, specifically around Brock Purdy, right? There's a ton to talk about, and you can look at it in a lot of different landscape. You can talk about it in a single season landscape where Purdy right now leads the NFL in several important categories. You talk about yards per attempt, he leads it by a mile. He's throwing for 9.9 yards per attempt, which is ridiculous because the yards per attempt isn't just how many yards they're throwing a completion, it's including the incompletions. So it tells you he's completing passes at a high rate and pushing the ball down the field. But there are a lot of things. I mean, one that we saw earlier in the year that was one of his most impressive games, week 4 against Arizona. I think it's important to note just because that's the exact team that the 49ers are playing this weekend. But Brock Purdy completed 20 of 21 passes in that game, 95%. That is the 49ers single game completion record for a player who threw for a minimum, I believe, of 15 or 20 attempts. I think that record was previously held by Joe Montana or Steve Young. Well, that record goes to Brock Purdy now. One of his most pristine games where he was just hitting every single target. He now faces that same opponent this weekend.
Yeah, that's something to look for. What was it, 95% completion percentage? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
that's insane. Yeah, anytime you're a quarterback for the 49ers and you're breaking franchise records when you have a team like that has guys like Steve Young, Joe Montana, T.Y. Tittle, or whatever his name is, those old guys, T.A. What's his name? T.Y., right? Tittle?
I think T.Y.
That's older than me, man. I'm pretty old, but that's older than me. I know they go back. They have some decent quarterbacks.
Y.A. one of the two. Yeah,
Y.A. Tittle, something like that. I'm sorry. No disrespect to one of the greatest. Rohan just disappeared on us. No disrespect to one of the greatest quarterbacks for 49ers history, but as old as I am, I'm not that old. So we'll have Rohan help out back up in a minute. But yeah, the 49ers are, man, they're breaking records left and right. There's like a huge amount of them. And it's not just Brock Purdy. I have one that I'll bring up later, but I want to get Rohan's take on what else are we looking at from a record breaking standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about that one. That's kind of a single game one. If you kind of look, though, at a very recent one, right? One that was broken very, very recently. You talk about completion percentage, and completion percentage is something, that can be skewed because when you look at a single statistic, right, you can think, okay, there's reasons that this is elevated or de-escalated. completion percentage, drops can factor in. The yards per attempt can factor in. Different elements, how far you're throwing the ball down the field. But one thing with Brock Purdy is he's throwing the ball down the field and completing at a high rate. He just completed his 7th straight game with 70% of completion percentage or higher. He is now the 4th quarterback in NFL history to have 7 straight games with 70% of his passes completed in a 7-game stretch, when you look at it. And when you think of the competition that Brock Purdy is facing in that category, it's some of the best savants in the NFL when it comes to accuracy and things like that. Drew Brees, Joe Montana, and then Sam Bradford, the outlier as well. He's in there. So you got 3 other guys, but Brock Purdy has completed passes at a high rate now in this last stretch, and I think that that's another important thing to know.
And I don't know if this is a record, but it sounds like it would be as well. But Brock Purdy has 4, I believe, of the highest. I think it's 4 of the highest QBR ratings this year out of all all quarterbacks. He has 4 of them, which is also phenomenal. Do you have any other records for Brock?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about some other stuff that happened this season. Earlier in the year, he threw for 3 touchdown passes, I believe, and 140. Talk about that QBR, or talk about QBR passer rating. He had 140 passer rating. By the way, the perfect passer rating is 158.3. So he had 140. He is the first or second quarterback, I believe, to have 3 touchdowns, multiple games with 3 touchdowns and 140 passer rating, joining Kurt Warner in there. And then another one is he's the first quarterback in NFL history to have a passer rating of 95 or higher in each of his first 6 career starts. Now, I don't value the pass rating, quarterback rating as much as other people do, but nonetheless, it's an important stat when you consider the category that Brock Purdy is in and the competition that he's facing. When you're saying, we're just throwing this out there, it's his first year, and he's first of all time, right? Of all time in that regard.
Yeah, and then I have a couple here that I want to share with you guys in regards to the season he's having. Completion percentage, he's tied with Joe Montana. This is 49ers franchise quarterback records. So Steve Young has the highest completion percentage in the season. He played 15 games, I believe, in 1994. 70.3 was his completion percentage. Joe Montana in 1989 had a 70.2. Right now, Brock Purdy has 70.2. So right now, he's tied with Joe Montana for the second highest completion percentage in in a season with 4 games left. It'll be interesting to see if he could pass Joe Montana in that record and possibly catch Steve Young. You're talking about 0.1 of a percentage point. So he's right there, really close. If he finishes strong, he might pass Steve Young and Joe Montana for the highest completion percentage in a season, which is phenomenal. Also, right now, the highest yard per game. Like a lot of people say that, the greatest season, most yards in a season was Jeff Garcia. But I broke it down further. I wanted to look at per game because, that's a 16-game season. I think he played 16 games, Garcia, that season. I'm pretty sure he did. But now it's a 17-game season. So people are like, oh, it's a 17-game season. He should break that record. But I broke it down yards per game. And if you look at it yards per game in that 2000 season where Jeff Garcia set the franchise record for most yards in a season, he was averaging 267.37 yards per game, whereas Brock Purdy right now in 2023 is trending 273 yards per game. So if he continues at this trajectory, he's going to break Jeff Garcia's record for most passing yards in a season. And not just in a season, you can't compare 17 to 16, but per game he's doing it. Which is phenomenal as well. And then one more, Rohan, and then I'll let you share any other ones you have. But touchdowns per game, that's the one thing where Brock needs to improve. I think he's top 5 for franchise quarterbacks in touchdowns per game. Steve Young has that record with 2.4, and then he also has the 2.18. So he has those top 2 seasons. But Brock Purdy's trending right now 1.94, which is still really good. But I think he's top 5 in that category. I want to get your take on those records I share with you and see if you had any others. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Yeah, I think the one you brought up was one that I had on my mind. You specifically talk about the passing yards per game and him breaking the franchise record because it has changed. The landscape of the NFL has changed with 16 games to 17 games. But it's still important to note that if it was still a 16-game season, Brock Purdy would still be the leader. And the cool thing is he's likely going to get a chance to blow Jeff Garcia's number out of the water with another game. Currently, like Ryan said, he's on a trajectory or he's averaging 273 yards per game in the air. That puts him on a trajectory to throw for 4,600 yards. Can you imagine a 49ers quarterback with the statistic of 4,600 passing yards in a season right next to him? I know we've had greats, but when you consider the magnitude of that, right? When we had Jimmy Garoppolo, we were begging for 4,000 yards, right? Let alone 4,600 yards, and even in some of the longer game seasons as well. But with Brock now, you're going to have the opportunity for that. I think he breaks the franchise record regardless. But per game average as well, he could break that record. He's on trajectory to do so right now, and I think that would be pretty impressive as well. And so that's the one that I think a lot of people will be looking for, because when you talk about quarterbacks and breaking that record, the number one thing people point to is passing yards per game. Right now, Brock Purdy, he's on trajectory to do that.
Here's another one, and BNA makes a joke, but it's actually another one. Since the NFL has transitioned to 17 games per season, which is 2 years ago. This is the third year. There's been no quarterbacks for the 49ers to play all 17 games. So that's another one, and that's a huge one. That's so crucial for the success of this team. That's why they're having so much success. He's joking, not really joking about Sam Darnold. I feel him. I don't want to see Sam Darnold start, but one of the main factors, the reason why the 49ers are so healthy, these are so successful this year, is because, one, the stellar play of Brock Purdy, and two, he's been healthy all season. I'm going to knock on wood for you superstitious people out there. But that has been fantastic. And if he can play 17 full games through the playoffs, win the Super Bowl, I mean, this is one of the top seasons, not only in 49ers history, but NFL history. Really hoping that is the outcome to this season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, when you talk about this specific stat, zero stats from Sam Darnold, when you go back to the beginning of the season, I'll fully admit that I was one of the people who said it, and that you didn't know exactly how the 49ers would end up. You might have docked their standings by one game because you expected a backup quarterback to play in at least one game. That's been the trend, I believe, since 2014. Where at least the starting quarterback has missed at least one game, or they've played multiple quarterbacks. And so I agree with you. I do not want the prospect of Sam Darnold starting a game in my mind, even when Brock was going through that cold stretch. I didn't think the 49ers had a choice other than write it out, because Sam Darnold is not a guy who you want starting football games for you. I don't believe that's the case. There's a reason that he is where he is right now, and kudos to him for still managing to have a pretty solid career financially. But overall, there's a reason that Brock Purdy is where he is, and it's a good sign both on the 49ers part for keeping him healthy, but both on as well as his part. His ability to move out of the pocket, that's something that's been well regarded and likely has probably saved him from a few sacks and potentially even a few injuries in that case. 13 games strong so far this season and going well.
Yeah, man, it's fantastic. As well as, when you consider that it's a lot of Brock, it's not like his offensive line is doing him any favors outside of Trent Williams and Aaron Banks. He's protecting himself by being able to move around and being aware. There's been a couple blown blocking assignments this year that are a little bit concerning. We saw one against the Eagles again. That's how Brock got hurt last year. We saw it in that Eagles game. I don't know if people noticed that, but there was a blown blocking assignment, Hassan Reddick, in the beginning. That's how he got his sack on Brock Purdy. So 49ers need to continue to do it. Kyle needs to do that's one area of improvement where he can, just in general, this team needs to improve their offensive line to protection for Brock Purdy. But Kyle needs to really dial in on protection and scheme with the guys he has, right? You got Colton McKivitz. You can't leave him on an island. You got to do what you got to do to protect him, whether you're having a tight end in there to help or a running back. Somebody's got to help out Colton McKivitz against elite pass rushers. And there have been several sacks this year. If you look at Brock Purdy's sacks, I would wager a third of them, just by watching the film, at least a third of them are straight up missed blocking assignments. And that comes down to Kyle, and it comes down to Brock. Obviously there's, maybe the running back missed, maybe the tight end missed, maybe the offensive lineman missed their assignments and messed up. But ultimately it comes down to Kyle scheming that up, as well as Brock Purdy recognizing it and making adjustments before he hikes the ball.
No, definitely. I think that's a good point. And I think that's a reason when you look at sack rate, that Brock Purdy doesn't have that high of a sack rate right now, right? I mean, you talk about the way that the 49ers
I
have
believe
been
he's
able.
18th. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the 49ers have a elite offensive line. I do think that they are improved. I do think they are underrated just because I think the value of a majority of the group outweighs the issues of a small portion of the group. But I think, I mean, I didn't expect them to necessarily be 18th, but when you look at it, it's primarily due to Brock Purdy's ability to, evade pressure when it's there, but also the way you've been able to scheme things up offensively to potentially, get the ball out quick and things like that. I do want to note something not necessarily record breaking, but a trend that I've noticed over the last now 5 games since the 49ers have come out of the bye. There's been something in Brock Purdy's game that has kind of been lingering, and it's intriguing to note because it doesn't usually go with what we've seen from the 49ers with the way that they pass the football. That is Brock Purdy's time to throw. When you look at the last few weeks, dating ahead of this game, or in the first 8 weeks, 8, 9 weeks of the season, where Brock Purdy, the first half of the year, Brock Purdy's time to throw was 2.54 seconds, a top 10 mark in the NFL. The last few weeks, 3.07 seconds, 3.1 seconds, 3.42 seconds, and then this past weekend he had 2.7 seconds, all well above his initial season mark. What does that tell me? It tells me Purdy, one, is feeling a lot more comfortable. Two, the offensive line is protecting a little better. And three, Purdy is finding different ways to create plays off script. I think that this has all contributed to the 49ers being able to have an even more dominant offense. And I mean, if you just even point to this last game, you talk about some of those throws, the Purdy bomb to IU, the Purdy bomb to even to Deebo Samuel, right? There was one where he's going off script and he's been able to create those. I think that's something that's important to note and impressive from Brock this year.
And another one, man, I don't know if you have any more for Brock, but I have another guy that I want to mention as well.
Go for it. Yeah.
So Fred Warner is now in the record books. He's the first linebacker for the 49ers to reach 100 tackles for his 6th consecutive season. He's the first linebacker to do that since Derek Smith did it 5 times for the 49ers. So that's a tremendous. I think a lot of times we focus on offense and quarterback, and rightfully so. That's what everyone wants to talk about. But Fred Warner is out there doing amazing things. I believe he's also one of the only people in the NFL that has like 100 tackles. What is it? 100 tackles, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and interception, something like that. There's some record also that he's one of 2 in the NFL right now. He's having a All-Pro year. He's having a Defensive Player of the Year type of year. He should be in that conversation. I don't know if he is, but he should be. What's your take on Fred Warner's record-setting year, and as well as do you think he is having a Defensive Player of the Year worthy year? Oh, you're muted, sir.
There we go. My bad. I think it's tough when you talk about Defensive Player of the Year overall. Why? Because when you look at where the award goes to, it's flash, right? It's flash. The only time where really a non-edge rusher is going to win or a non-D tackle is going to win it is when someone has a bunch of interceptions. That's why it's tough to name Fred Warner as a Defensive Player of the Year, which is why when you look at the award that kind of dictates how well Fred Warner played, it's first-team All-Pro. Is he the best linebacker in the game? And I think that he's well on his way to another first-team All-Pro. I remember when I was looking at interviews the other day, and a guy asked Troy Greenlaw, do you think this is one of Fred Warner's best years, if not his best year? And it's tough to really compare Fred Warner's best years just because there have been so many good ones stacked upon another. And he's a guy where you don't really look at statistics to ultimately dictate how well he's played that year. It's just his impact on the field, his presence in coverage, his ability to, set the tone for games. And so I do think that when you talk about Fred, there's a reason he is All-Pro Fred, because he's the best linebacker in the game. I think he's setting himself up to potentially get that again. And I also think when you just take a step back, look in hindsight, who was Fred Warner compared to for, as he entered his prime? The guy who he got big contract money with, Darius Leonard, known as Shaquille Leonard now. One player's in the midst of his 5-year deal. The other player just got cut. It's kind of intriguing to see the 2 different storylines for players that were compared to one another and considered as the 2 All-Pros of the position.
So Thomas is saying that Fred's not even on the board for Defensive Player of the Year. Who would you have as Defensive Player of the Year?
I think I was looking at this the other day, and I think that when you talk about Defensive Player of the Year, like I said, it likely usually gravitates towards the sacks kind of category and things like that. Now, I do
Hmm.
know Khalil Mack is the guy who leads the league in sacks right now, which is intriguing because that team, quite frankly, sucks with the LA Chargers. But there have been a few guys. I know TJ Watt is really up there. He has 14 sacks. I would assume that he's in the running. The other guy who that comes to mind, Max Crosby, although I don't know if he's going to be able to win it with the way that they play, with the way that their record is.
Hmm.
But TJ Watt is the guy who probably comes to mind this year with the way he's played so far. Good year for him.
Yeah, another guy who's breaking records, man. CMC. He tied the record for most consecutive games with a touchdown. I need to check. I should have again. I've been so busy, guys. I apologize, but I know he's close to breaking Roger Craig's record for most um, combined yards from
Touchdown.
scrimmage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That one. Yeah.
yeah, I believe he is. So I need to double check, but I think he's right there as well. So what you're seeing here, Rohan, is multiple records being broken by this team.
Mhm.
Not only like as a franchise, but also NFL records. And this is a franchise that has 4 Super Bowls. Go back into the '90s with some of the great Hall of Famers. What does this tell you about this team? All these records being broken, they're doing things that have never been done before in this franchise or in the NFL. What does that mean for this team?
I think it's really cool. And I actually, funny enough, wrote an article not on records, but on something that talks about the cohesion of this unit, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. It's the infusion of talent when you mix it together is what makes this team so special. I wanted to research, I wanted to look at the statistics and also the film that backed up how well this offense has worked since coming out of the bye week. If you look at our offensive weapons, we should have 4 1,000-yard weapons this year when you talk
Mhm.
about from scrimmage. Debo Samuel's currently in 900. Ayuk and McCaffrey have already broken it. George Kittle's at 810. Those guys, all 4 of them, right? When's the last time you could really say all 4 of them have had a strong year together? I know McCaffrey's recent, right? But Ayuk's broken out the last 2 years. Last year, Debo had a down year.
Mhm.
Kittle, you've seen some strong years from him, but last year wasn't as strong of a year. Some injuries he's battled over the course of his career and things like that. But to
Mhm.
see all 4 work together, you kind
Yeah.
of didn't anticipate this from a 49ers offense where you've been accustomed to the run first scheme. You've been accustomed to all sorts of different things. It's the volume and the outlook of the offense has changed this year. It's accustomed to really helping out, or not helping out, but targeting all 4 of these different guys. I think that that's kind of led to a widespread offensive attack and really the fluidity of at the pace at which San Francisco has played. I think that's kind of the impressive part. Going back to your question about how the players have played together and really how these records are kind of being broken together. I think
Mhm.
that's what makes this team, when you talk about unstoppable or elite factor or things like that, that's the reason for it. It's because they're all cohesively working together at such a high pace.
Yeah, and real quick, Jerem brings up there's no talk of Bland for Dallas for deep weight. Yeah, that's a good
He's
point,
there.
man.
Yeah, he's there.
He's got to be there. He's got to be there. Yeah, no, back to what we were talking about, man. So here's my argument, though. Here's what makes me say that. I mean, I've been back and forth on this. Like, should it be CMC? Should it be Brock Purdy? Should it be Dak Prescott who gets the MVP award? But I don't think with the record you just brought up, which is the first time I believe since Peyton Manning did it with the Colts in 2000 and I want to say 4. It was a long time ago. That was the last time that a team has had 4 1,000-yard players on the same team. So the difference, though, here's my argument for MVP now. Because of all this happening, this doesn't happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. He had 6 years. This doesn't happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. We saw Travarius Ward on Eric Armstead's show talking about what they did in the Super Bowl to defend the 49ers, what their game plan was. And it really wasn't mind-blowing at all. They said they wanted to put the hands of Jimmy Garoppolo, put the game on the hands of Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the game plan. That was the game plan for 6 years. This doesn't happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Brock Purdy is making this happen. Yes, he's on an amazing offense with a great play caller. He has some of the best, if not the best, weapons in the NFL. I agree with all of that. And I understand the impact that CMC has had on this team. It's been tremendous. I don't think you have the same team without him. But if you take Brock Purdy out of this and Jimmy G's your quarterback or Sam Darnold, these things don't happen. Yes, they probably still win, 11, 12 games this year. But the way they're winning, they're blowing teams out. I wanted to run this by you too, because I don't know if you know this or saw this, but I did the calculations. Shout out to whatever the gentleman's name is. I took some of his statistics and then reverse mathematicized, if that's a word. Probably not. What's his name? Nick Wagner. Yeah, so Nick Wagner put out the statistics of how many passes and his success or whatnot in the fourth quarter for Brock Purdy. So I was able to take that, subtract it by his total passing attempts, and calculate, if Brock Purdy passed at the same rate that he does in the first three quarters, if he did that for four quarters, and the reason he doesn't do that for four quarters is because they're blowing teams out and they're running the clock down in the fourth quarter. But the rate at which he's passing, if he passed all four quarters like he has in the first three quarters all year long, he's on pace to pass. He would be on pace to pass 31 times per game, which is a lot more than what we ever saw from Jimmy Garoppolo as well. So one thing I wanted to see, and one thing I complained about during the skid is, yes, Brock Purdy was turning the ball over, but if you looked at his overall numbers, they're fantastic. And I was like begging Kyle Shanahan, please pass more. His numbers are good. We need to turn up the attempts. And I have to double check and compare before the skid or during the skid and afterwards. But it feels to me when watching it that the passing attempts through the first half or in the first three quarters have gone up. And when I did the math on it, it's definitely more than what we've seen in previous years. 31 passing attempts per game if he had to pass through all four quarters. And again, he's not doing that because they're smashing teams. And by the fourth quarter, they're trying to run the clock out. But I want to get your take on that statistic that I ran.
Yeah, I mean, something that I consistently see floating on Twitter is Brock Purdy somewhere in the 20s in pass attempts, top five, top three in pass yards. And I think that that's just the way the 49ers offense works. I don't have I don't have an issue at all with the way the 49ers are running their offense now. And I think you bring up a great point. I mean, he's passing for some of the most pass attempts we've seen, right, in recent history, at least from the 49ers quarterback. I think that that's something that's important to note. And also, when you look at maybe the lack of pass attempts, I don't think pass attempts is the best way to dictate what the 49ers are doing for two reasons. One, Brock Purdy passes at 9.9 yards per attempt. He's getting a first down nearly every attempt, which means the 49ers are moving the ball down the field a lot more, so they have less plays to potentially, work in between the chains. And then on top of that, you have the run game that you do. But more importantly, 49ers have beaten the crap out of teams. I mean, they're up at the end of games where they don't have to throw the football. And so I think when you look at all of it, it's still very impressive that Brock Purdy is top 5 and top 3 in passing yards this year. And in those kind of statistics, passing completion and things like that, I think it's pretty impressive that he's up there. I think it's a testament, to Kyle Shanahan's growth. I know we spoke about this maybe 3 weeks ago. You talked about, have you noticed a change in Kyle Shanahan? You attributed it to Brock Purdy. You're absolutely right, and I think that this is the exact topic about it, the exact debate about it, because Kyle Shanahan, with Brock Purdy at quarterback, finally a guy who he believes can unleash his full offense, has let it go. I mean, you've seen everything in there. And I'm not saying Kyle Shanahan didn't let it go under Jimmy Garoppolo. The deep shots were there. Garoppolo didn't take them and things like that. But you've fully seen what Kyle Shanahan's offense could be, the actual result, the actual production. And I think that's important to note with Brock Purdy at the helm.
Yeah, and I think you see it in Kyle Shanahan, man. He seems a little less irritable this year. He seems more relieved, more relaxed. He's not as snarky with the press, outside of a few moments here and there, but he seems to be a different Kyle Shanahan. The offense is definitely different. And the difference is, yes, he has all these weapons, and CNC is fantastic, but Brock Purdy is the reason why they're able to open up the offense. Before, even Brock Purdy came out the other day. I think he was on KNBR, and he was being interviewed asking him about his deep ball game. Right. And he said this is new to him. And that's why I noticed last year. I think last year I said he was 2 for 6, 33% with an interception over 30 yards. This year he's like 17 for 22, something crazy like that. So he's out there killing it. and he's been the difference maker. So I could see him being the MVP on this team. It makes sense to me. Rohan, real quick, I got Blue Magic backstage, but I want to ask you this question. I ask you this every week, I think, and I wanted to get your opinion now because I'm pretty damn confident now, and I know you haven't been. Do you think the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl this year?
Again, I think I'll probably relate to what I said last week. Last week I said I would. What do you call it? I didn't think they would, and I think that it would come down to really. I think the Super Bowl favorite is going to come down to Week 16. I think the Baltimore Ravens right now are the Super Bowl favorites out of the AFC. I think they have by far the most complete team and some elite coaching on both sides. I think they've had some really good coaching on both sides. I think that's the one that it's going to come down to because, well, it's at Levi's too. But you win that game, you just beat the Super Bowl favorite, or the perceived one of the two. The Super Bowl runner-up and Super Bowl favorite. I think that game is likely going to be kind of what gives me the best tell of how I can view this season. The moment, I'm very curious to see how it goes. Predicted at the beginning of the season that the 49ers wouldn't win the Super Bowl. Now, has my confidence shifted? Absolutely. I think Brock Purdy's play, because the number one thing when we came into the season was the biggest question mark is Brock Purdy. We have, 6-7 games of a sample size. Sure, you can predict what you want to predict, but based on the sample size specifically that we saw, there were flaws, inherent flaws. Brock Purdy has cleaned those flaws up. He is a complete quarterback right now, and he's utilizing everything to his skill set. And so if his ascension can lead to a Super Bowl, opportunity sooner than later, in this year, I think the 49ers have a good chance to take it away. But I think it ultimately will come down to that Week 16 game.
Let me ask you something. Do you have to leave or you want to stick around with Mr. Blue
No,
Magic?
I can stay. Yeah, I'm good.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask everyone to hang in there with me because I wasn't prepared for that. So let me edit something real quick and get that taken care of so we can do that. There we go. That's simple. Maybe I was more prepared than I thought.
Hey,
all right. This should be good. All right, Mr. Blue Magic, what's up, man?
What's poppin'? Yo, Brooklyn in the building. You already know.
Nice to see you, man. Good to have you here.
So the reason I said in the comments that I wanted Rohan to stay for a second, Ro, I know you just, had the little surprise mother's birthday thing. Shout out to that. Like, we gotta love the people that we have before they gone. But I wanted to give Rohan his flowers.
Mm-hmm.
I've been preaching Rohan for a pretty long time. and because Rohan doesn't have a super outward personality, or he doesn't have outlandish takes and so forth and so on, Rohan's knowledge was it flies under the radar so much.
Yeah, not my radar. That's why he's here every Thursday. Yeah, but I feel you. Yeah,
it's something beautiful as a 42-year-old 49ers fan who has been through a lot of the things that newer 49ers fans have not witnessed. When I hear Rohan, when I hear you, and I hear Vish, and I see the passion for the game, I and not even just in the 49ers community, but just the overall game, the students that you guys are, the way you do your due diligence through school and work and putting that whole balance together, and the level-headedness. I'm one of those who I don't have hot takes, but I don't have popular takes, because I try to take my heart out of it as much as I can and be rational. And most fans don't like that. Until Jimmy left, we had a whole bunch of our community like, yeah, he's the greatest, like he's and we all knew he wasn't. So I just wanted to start my appearance with giving Rohan his flowers. And for everybody in the chat, we already know you subscribe to the G, or else you wouldn't be here. But do me a favor, man. Even if you don't agree with the stuff I be talking, you gotta agree with this, man. Go give Rohan a follow. Go subscribe to his channel. Go hit the boy up on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Cause yeah, man, sure doing it.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you pointing that out. Rohan, you got anything you want to respond with?
No, I just gotta say, really appreciate it. In this business especially, it's really fun for me just because I'm young, and as the game progresses, I'm able to watch the game and just try and learn as much as I can. Like you said, for me, this is just about being a student, trying to understand something and talk about something that I love. And the most important thing to me is that's why I like these shows. It's the conversation, the communication that you can have with somebody else about football, right? Ryan does a phenomenal job every week hosting these shows and kind of getting them, not only for us two to talk, but also for the chat to kind of have an insightful conversation. And so it's just about that. Really appreciate it, though. I mean, definitely, take that to heart.
Right on, Ro, man. I appreciate you, dude. And thanks, Mr. Blue Magic, for pointing that out. I'm gonna get the show finished with Mr. Blue, but again, I'm not sleeping on him. That's why he's here every Thursday. Make sure you guys all like and subscribe to Rohan as well. Thank you, Ro.
Thank you. Y'all have a good Thursday.
All right, buddy. All right, man. That was great, man. Thanks for giving the man his flowers. I think he deserves it. I think you're right for that, man. And good to have you back.
It's New York, we back. Always whether it's on X, whether it's a quick text or whatever, whether I'm just watching the show, like the same thing with Rohan. I caught you off of Grant, and I seen the success coming, and I'm proud of you for not only the content creator, aspect, but the family, man, changing lives and all that. Like, you already know, like, you know where I'm from, so to see anyone make it about a certain situations that we were in, certain mindsets we was in, I'm always salute the G. Why y'all think it?
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. No, I wasn't always this I was at a good heart. I think it's just I there was a time in my life where I was kind of I just didn't really have a reason to do what I'm doing now, basically. And I started having kids, and I was like, man, you need to get your act together, man, and focus on the right things. And ever since I started having kids at about 21 years old, I've been on the grind, and I've learned. It took me a few years to fully get into the right mindset, but it's paid off, man. I'm 44 now, and honestly, man, surprised at where I've been able to take this, everything I've been doing. And I'm not talking about YouTube. I'm talking about just providing for my family and providing a good life for them.
And I told you this before. I love it when you take time away from, what I mean, just a little time away from what we come for, like the Niners, the games. When we smack up on Philly, and we gotta, what I mean, we gotta let them know quick. But I love the fact that you bring. You also add life knowledge. Like, that's why I'm always, like, no matter what, I'm always be a supporter of the G.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're gonna honestly, my long-term goal is to build this channel up to a certain level. I think in my head the number is like 20,000 subscribers. Once I get there, we're gonna be talking about not only 49ers. I'm probably gonna add some NBA, some MLB, but also a lot more of the life stuff, a lot more entertainment stuff. Try to get more guests from all facets of entertainment and just entrepreneurship. Just kind of build this channel, but really with the way the algorithm is set up, you kind of have to focus in your growth stage. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Sprinkling it in a little bit, and you know what I'm saying, get people more. Man, I'm from New York, home of the hustlers. Y'all start paying attention when the boy drop jewels. Whether you don't like certain takes or certain verbiage, man, you can't dispute knowledge.
And I gotta honestly, there's a lot more I want to share with people. It's just there's a time and a place, and we'll get there. And one thing I really want to do, man, is interviews. I love interviewing. Like, I go on Grant's show and I go on Jesse's show, and I enjoy that, being a guest. But I actually like this role better because I can ask and learn and like decipher conversations and try to get more out of people. And my goal is to interview people that I look up to, and not really celebrities. I don't really look up to celebrities, just people that have achieved things that I want to achieve or that other people want to achieve. I just want to dive in and just soak all that knowledge up. So that's another goal of mine for this channel long term.
Student of the game of life. Got to respect it.
Yeah, man. That's been, honestly, that's why I always like talking to you, because we could talk about these things. Let me ask you a question before we dive into this Niner stuff. I got a question for I've been asking people. I want to know, when you're not like talking 49ers, when you're not out coming on YouTube people's channels or on X or TikTok doing Niner stuff or whatever you do for football, what are you doing?
You know what? I love that question. So I I host, organize, and promote adult events. Like that's my main. That's my
Like
main
what? What kind of events?
adult.
Adult events. All right. Well, let's keep pushing. Yeah, yeah, no, I feel you. We'll talk more about it. I'm interested in that, but it's too early in the morning probably for that discussion.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I don't know if you watched. Did you catch the first half of the show, me and Rohan?
Nah, I actually just got out of a meeting, but I'm gonna catch it on replay. But shoot whatever it is, and we can breeze through it. I know
Yeah,
you.
so we just laid out like 30 minutes of records, basically. That the 49ers, Brock Purdy, 49ers, Christian McCaffrey, Fred Warner, Kyle Shannon, the
What's
records that we're breaking.
records? I was coming on because everybody usually tune in to Blue to hear his whole quarterback take, but that's one of the things that I was gonna bring up today. Fred Warner is actually setting records.
Yeah. Fred Warner, yeah, I brought that up. We talked about it. Yeah, he's setting records out here he's the number one linebacker in 49ers history with 6 consecutive 100 tackle seasons.
And I believe he's the oh man, I don't know where I put my notes, but he's like the second linebacker with a statistic in a certain amount of tackles, sacks,
Yeah.
forced fumbles, interceptions. Like
yeah.
we Fred Warner doesn't get enough credit. I mean, you'll hear around the league and from media here and there that he's arguably the best linebacker in the game, and it's like an afterthought mention. But because Fred he doesn't give you like super wild plays every game or multiple times a game, and just like the MVP race, we understand it's become a quarterback award. The Defensive Player of the Year award has potentially, what I mean, it's basically become a quarterback sacks award.
Mm-hmm.
It's edge award, unless you're just like an amazing D tackle or inside, you know what I'm saying, lineman, and you're just getting to the quarterback ridiculously. So it's hard, even when it comes to corners, because a wild play is getting an interception. The way Fred maneuvers all across the field in coverage, in the run game, rushing a passer, whether he gets there or not, but just making it easier for linemen at times with the pressure that he brings on blitz. Fred has been amazing. And I've watched the Patrick Willises, the DeVaro Bowmans, the Bryant Young. I've seen like that cream of the crop, and Fred Warner is definitely a generational talent. You know who Fred reminds me of, and not getting talked up as much as he should. Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan.
Tim Duncan was Mr. Fundamental. He didn't really give you emotion. It wasn't a bunch of flash.
Mm-hmm.
When you sit back and you actually look at the game itself, then you're like, oh yeah, Tim Duncan, one of the greatest power forwards ever. But it's off of name and flash and hype and mystique.
Yeah,
they're not mentioned.
You know what's funny about Tim Duncan? I'm a fan of Tim Duncan. I respect what he's done. I didn't like watching him because of those reasons you laid out. It's just like it's very fundamental and successful and it works and it's great, but it's like, come on, man. It's like watching John Stockton, play or something like that. Yeah, because they do the right thing, but there's no flair on it. There's no swag on it. But yeah, no. Back to your point, Fred Warner, man, I feel like he should be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year, but he's not. I don't know why that is, but he's not really in that conversation at all.
Come a edge award.
Yeah, you're right. It's like the MVPs become quarterback, defense player of the year is who gets the most sacks, basically. Yeah.
And not even just the most sacks, but in a flashy way.
Right. You gotta have a celebration afterwards.
Fred is not like he's not known for being a super big aggressive hitter, but when he lays the wood, he doesn't give you the he'll flex on you, he'll stand over you, he'll get that face mask close to yours, but it's nothing that like pops super out. There's no like signature celebration, there's no showing me the money crawling. So he's Fred.
Yeah.
Fred definitely deserves a lot more credit.
Agreed, bro. All right, man. I want to get your take. Somebody actually asked you a question, man. So let me just get your take. I want to get your take on Brock Purdy. I think you and I saw things similarly last year. Obviously, he's playing differently this year. To me, not even close. And I'm sold on Brock Purdy, especially this year. Now that I've seen he's able to attack downfield deep on a regular basis. But I want to get your take on where you stand on how you see Brock Purdy right now.
All right, chat, y'all get ready because y'all know this is y'all time to try to slay me. So the same things that we saw in Brock Purdy. The only thing I'll disagree with you with is he's doing them now. Brock is always what he's doing now. I seen it last year as well. What it was is Kyle. Kyle is coming off of the experiment that was Trey Lance, then being forced to go back to the underachievement that was Jimmy Garoppolo. And now he goes to, number one, a quarterback that he didn't draft, the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant, so forth and so on. So last year, Kyle didn't trust Brock with certain plays. And my thing is this. For as much as we talk about how much Brock is pushing the ball down the field this year, he could have done the same thing last year. The difference is what Kyle has been scheming up.
Well, let me ask you this. I think you're right, like in some degree, because here's the thing. He didn't do it in college, to his admission, right? Last year, he went 2 for 6, 33%, over 30 yards with an interception. This year, he's doing it much more. And what you're saying is that it's Kyle, and it's probably because he's so used to calling plays for Jimmy Garoppolo. He had to Brock basically had to earn that confidence from Kyle.
Trust.
Gotcha. Okay.
So now I'll dive into the efficiency now. So we can use numbers to support our arguments, depending on what numbers we use. If we don't use them in context, it's easy to throw out a stat, but when you watch and truly pay attention, you'll understand why the stat is what it is. So we know Brock is not throwing as much as the upper echelon of the league.
Well, you missed it this morning. And I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to throw out this out because I think a lot of people aren't thinking about it from this perspective. I posted this yesterday, so I did the math on it. If Brock Purdy passed this through 4 quarters, the same amount that he passed through 3 quarters on average, right? Like if you look at the first 3 quarters for all his games and you divide that number by 3 and then multiply it times 4, that tells you how many he would be doing through all 4 quarters if you pass the same amount as he does through 3 quarters. And the reason why they don't do that is because every time they win, they're beating teams' ass. They're running out the clock in the 4th quarter. But if he was doing that, he would pass for 31 attempts per game. if you look at the first half, he's closer to a trending 35 attempts per game. So they're actually passing a lot more than they are. It's just in the fourth quarter they don't have to because they're already whooping the team ass.
Well, see now that's where I have to disagree. I have to agree with you, but disagree with you at the same time. We're passing more than we've passed in the past, but compared to the league, so we like I said, we can use statistics to support a certain swing. So we can take in the hypothetical if we did the math for the 3 quarters and spread it out, but that's not what's happening. Now, it's not a knock on Brock because we blowing teams out and we don't have to pass, later on in the game. But what's in front of me is in front of me, and that's all I can go off of. So Brock is not passing as much. Number one, it's not our system. We're a run first, quick out team first. That's our identity. So that opens up everything down the field because you can't come into the game and not. We force teams to honor the run. We force teams to honor the underneath. We force teams to honor the middle. And when it's crazy how when you just tell the truth, you're either not a fan or you're against a person. I've never said that Brock wasn't a good quarterback. Like and as much as I give these takes, I believe Brock is right now, outside of a handful of quarterbacks in the league, out of 32 starting quarterbacks, there's only a handful of quarterbacks that I would take over Brock in this system, the way this team is run. And there are elite quarterbacks that if I knew Kyle was not going to adjust his system and his scheme, I would not take them over Brock.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Because I believe that because of what he doesn't do extremely well, he overly excels in other aspects. Because the one thing, and when we can go back to Brock's his college career, it was the same thing. And it's one of the reasons why he slid the way he slid. So yes, Brock has had wow moments, in college. He's had these traits, but the same traits that people talked about in camp and so forth, he also had those same traits in college. Brock is a student of the game. Brock is a hard worker. It's like me. I'm not 6'1", I'm not 6'2", so forth and so on. And I played basketball and I played football in elementary, junior high school, and college. I always had to work extra hard because physically I didn't have as many traits as other players. The one thing I relied on was my work ethic, being underestimated for my size. I am very strong for my size. If you just seen me in the streets, you wouldn't understand it. And my speed. My fastest 40 came in my last.
What's your 40 time, man? What's your 40 time, bro?
And my last, I think it was 2 months before my senior year in high school. I ran a 4.34.
Damn, that's fast, man. What'd you play? What position did you play?
I played running back. I played free safety. I returned punts. I returned kicks, and I was a gunner.
Yeah, back then I remember you had to play like multiple ways. I did that when I was young too.
But I had to, I had to overly excel because physically, compared to everything else, and just the way the game is, period. So like I grew up, and Barry Sanders is my favorite player of all times. Like because I couldn't truck everybody.
Yeah.
I had to work on being elusive. I played football, I played basketball, and I played soccer, which is actually football. But
so how does this apply to Brock? What do you? I guess I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Brock had to work harder at the things that he was great at because he didn't have a big arm.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So I can't throw the ball 60 yards down the field. So I have to make sure that I make everything count. That is why Brock is so precise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why he worked on putting it in places. And Brock does have the ability. But the thing that gets me is we make different arguments. People talk about people moving the goalposts against Brock. I see more goalposts being moved for Brock. So in one turn, we'll talk about how we have the best roster in the league. Brandon Ayuk is number one in separation. Debo, it doesn't matter how many is on him. Yada yada. Christian McCaffrey is super Swiss Army knife. He can do everything. Then we talk about how we have a genius play caller, schemer, so forth and so on. Oh, he can scheme everybody open. So when you take that into account, and once again, let me preface this by saying this is not a knock on Brock. I think Brock is literally the perfect complement to the Kyle Shanahan offense.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take that into account, Brock should have this type of, when he's already pretty damn accurate, his numbers should reflect this.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't double CMC, you can't double Debo, you can't double Ayuk, and you can't double Kittle. It's only a certain amount of defensive players on the field.
Well,
Now,
I would say this. Let me jump in. I would say this. I understand what you're saying. I think it's possible though that not only are those players great and does he have a great play caller, but he's also playing well. And I think that's the combination that we're seeing right now. It's he's playing well. He like if Jimmy G was here, this shit ain't happening.
Now, I'm glad you said that. So when you go back last year and you look at Jimmy Garoppolo's, and we all know I said Jimmy was trash from the time we got him from New England.
Yeah.
Even in that 5-game stretch, I seen who Jimmy G was.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been on the Jimmy G is trash. We did the dumbest thing by giving him money. Mm-hmm. But once again, I'm also not going to not be truthful in what I see and how I see the team. When you go back, and Jesse put a tweet out, I think it was earlier this year or last year. And I had already looked up the numbers because I was on one of Jesse's calling shows, and we went through this before he actually sent the tweet out. And he told me, he's like, yo, I was just about to send a tweet out like this. But if you look at Jimmy G's 5 full games with CMC and a healthy Niners offense,
yeah, his
numbers and Brock numbers were.
Well, look, I'm gonna push back. I love this, Mr. Blue Magic, because we're disagreeing for the first. This is good though, but I wanna push back on it. Although the numbers are the same, what did you say earlier to me today? You can make numbers prove any point you want to, right? But it's watching the game, and you and I both watch these games, and you know damn well that the things you're seeing from Brock Purdy, Jimmy G wasn't doing that shit, right? Jimmy G was dinking and dunking, but getting the same results. But Brock Purdy's making all the throws, and even if the numbers look same, it don't matter because we're watching the game and we can see the difference.
But no, but the only you're absolutely right, and I've said that myself. But when people say that, for me, Brock is bringing another element to the team. Mm-hmm. That I can give him, because Jimmy G, we already know Jimmy G could not throw down the field or outside the numbers at all,
and he was a statue in the pocket
at all. Yeah. Brock does bring. And that's another thing. We're comparing Brock to we're putting him pitting him against something that's always going to work in his favor, Jimmy G. So the only reason I brung up those numbers and the fact that the team was scoring 29 points a game in those games, mm-hmm. Jimmy G had not thrown a interception in those games. It's more so And when I say things like this, it's more so respect towards Christian McCaffrey than it is a slight against Brock.
I think it's fair to say that Christian McCaffrey makes every quarterback better, but I also think it's not. You and I both know that Brock's doing shit that Jimmy G could never have done, and therefore it's opening up this entire offense.
But see, that's most of my point when I get into Brock. We not supposed to be comparing him to a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and I don't know how Jimmy got brought up, but what I'm saying is in general, I think what I'm seeing from Brock Purdy is he's giving Kyle his whole playbook back.
Yes, and I gave Kyle his flowers and after the Philly game, because Kyle made the in-game adjustments that we've been dying for him to make. And the reason is, and this is, so when people say, oh, well, Brock is elevating the team. Yes, but not in the sense that that people are trying to say. He's elevating the team because he's allowing Kyle to dig deeper into his bag.
So let me ask you this. Do you agree with Cam Newton, or what's your take on what Cam Newton said about Brock Purdy?
I agree with Cam Newton. Now, y'all about to go crazy. Listen to the message before you take that piece. When we pay too much attention to the messenger, we lose the message. Now, is Cam bitter? Absolutely, because Cam is and he believes that he's still better than more quarterbacks in the league today than he actually is. Just from a longevity standpoint, Cam, number one, you've been out the game for X amount of time. The game has evolved from when you were playing. Quarterback play mentally is on a different level. And Cam's biggest thing was his mental. Cam can play football, but he wasn't mentally strong enough to compete with the greats. So would I take Cam over Brock if I was starting a team in their primes? Yes. But I also would be putting an offense around Cam. You know what I'm saying? Like,
would you consider Brock Purdy a game manager?
And that's where the problem comes in at. Game manager. When we hear game manager, we think of a backup who the team just hasn't actually found a franchise quarterback. That's what people think. A game manager is a backup. A game manager is just a serviceable quarterback. Brock is not a game manager. For how much we want to talk about Dak going Dak. Dak is not a game manager. Right. But what Cam was trying to say, and the same way people took the dink and dunk thing and ran with it, and even right now, I still hear people take that little shot. Even though you said for this whole year,
it's never gonna die. I'll probably hear that for 5-6 years.
And I no longer feel that because of the way the offense has changed and Brock's growth and progression. So Cam was talking about is the difference between being elite and being a very good quarterback or a server. You know what I'm saying? Or going a list.
Like how when I said dink and dunk was the inability to not having the arm strength to go deep. Now I was wrong about both, right? It was a wrong definition to call him dink and dunk in the first place. I think that was really never my take. My take was that he doesn't have the arm strength to make those passes consistently because he never has. And now I was wrong about that too, because obviously he can do it. But yeah, the definition itself it was wrong. So I think what you're saying is people are arguing about the definition of game manager. They have different opinions of what that means, and that's why they're taking it so critically.
And when you look at the year that the league is in, quarterback play is down outside of literally Brock, Dak, and so.
Look, my boy Melvin asked this question, and you're bringing up the answer right now, right? He says, have we recently had this many MVP contenders around the league? And the answer is no, because it's usually clear There's usually one or two quarterbacks out there throwing for 5,000 plus yards, 40 plus touchdowns. We don't have that this year, and that speaks to what you're talking about right now. So if you want to expand on what you were saying.
Yeah, so quarterback play is down. We see it across the league. League play is down. League play. In all fairness, there's only one clear cut team that is just like heads and shoulders over the rest. And no matter who you are, if you remove your heart, if they're in a game against anybody, you're inclined to pick them because they're the best team, and that is the Niners.
Mhm.
When have we ever had a season where it wasn't, oh, it's Aaron Rodgers or it's Patty Mahomes or, Brett Favre, Joe Montana? We've never had a year where these quarterbacks that weren't taken high in the draft, didn't have a large body of work, were on the top of the league. Joe Burrows goes down.
Josh Allen struggling. Mahomes ain't playing like himself.
Patty Mahomes doesn't have receivers, so he's looking worse. Lamar Jackson loses Mark Andrews. You know what I'm saying? Justin Herbert, it looks like the Chargers look like they fell off a cliff and they don't know how to play football. So
now you got Dak and Brock leading the NFL.
It's foreign. It's foreign to the eyes. It's almost unthinkable to speak. Like, let's even take Brock out of it, right? Who would have ever thought that we would be putting Dak Prescott in an MVP conversation? Tua, who Miami was on the verge of thinking of drafting another starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So when Cam is talking, he's looking at the league and he's like, this is what we're producing. This is what we're talking about. We are literally talking about the MVP being in legitimate consideration, Tyreek Hill or CMC.
Who's your vote, by the way? Who's your vote?
Putting Tyreek Hill, CMC in an MVP race when you have the likes of Josh Allen, when you have the likes of Pat Mahomes, when you have the likes of Joe Burrows, when we heard that Aaron Rodgers was going to a Jets team that had some potential, and they just that leadership, and maybe they can,
because QB play is down throughout the league. What I want to get your take though. Who's your vote? If you have a vote for MVP, who do you give it to?
It was CMC for me, clear cut, until I seen Miami, and when Tyreek went down.
Mm-hmm.
Miami runs through Tyreek. As much as CMC is the catalyst, he's the engine to our Ferrari. Tyreek Hill is the Ferrari. Everyone else is just passengers. That is the biggest distinction. I've seen Pat Mahomes lose Tyreek Hill and still win a Super Bowl. I've seen Pat Mahomes, miss Travis Kelce a little bit and still be able to fight. We've seen what we look like without missing Debo. We missed Debo last year with Brock, and Brock still did his numbers. He's still cooked.
Yeah.
I've never seen a team lose one player and a drop off be that great.
What about with Brock? What if Brock fell off and you have Sam Darnold at quarterback? How would the team look?
I'm gonna stick with this. Sam Darnold's trash, but Sam Darnold has talent.
He does.
He has talent. Sam Darnold can throw the football.
Yeah, it's the mental.
He's super wacky up here, and he gets real timid. We would not look nowhere near as great as we look with Brock. But number one, with Kyle Shanahan and this roster and the way the season has played on and how bad other teams, like, we look good enough to where I honestly believe we'd only have maybe one or two extra losses if we started Sam Darnold the whole year. As great as our weapons are, and that's why I say, I love giving Brock his flowers. I love it. I'm never gonna discredit great good, very good play, elite play. I'm never going to discredit that. And that's why I said Brock is not a game manager. That's what Cam got it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I literally said because of the attributes that Brock has, he's able to help the team because he's able for Kyle to dig deeper in his bag.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. And
I also have to keep it a buck. We have, don't call Kyle Shanahan a genius in one turn. Don't say he scripts the best game plays, game plans, so forth and so on. Don't say how great Christian McCaffrey is, Debo is, Kittle is, so forth and so on, and then turn around and say, "Oh well, yeah, he has all of that, but it's him." Nah, it's not. It's a complete marriage. And even when people, and I've pushed back on Brock with the whole missing players thing. Yes, I do. I do believe that his play will, dips when he's missing key players, but what people don't realize is when we lost Debo, we didn't have Trent as well. So
Yeah.
I don't put that on when people say, "Oh, well, if Brock misses one player, it's da-da-da." No, you can't use that argument because we haven't seen him in that situation this year. This year, he missed his left tackle. Arguably the second most important piece of your offense behind the quarterback. That's your quarterback's blind side.
Mm-hmm.
The only quarterbacks that the left tackle is not more important is left-handed quarterbacks because their blind side is on their right. So their right tackle is more important for them. But with our O-line, and now mind you, I also want to give credit to our O-line because our O-line has not been looking as bad as we believed and projected.
Let me jump on the original point though. Here's the thing: if Sam Darnold was our quarterback, yes, we'd probably have close to the same amount of wins, maybe one or two less. But by the fashion of which we're winning and the confidence to which I would have going into the playoffs and potential to win a Super Bowl would be much lower. Like I think Sam Darnold, could he beat the Cowboys if he had to play them like Brock Purdy did? Maybe he might beat them. He ain't beat them by 30 though. I think Brock is. I think what we have here and why I'm so excited about this season, man, is I agree with all your points about Kyle and all these weapons and skill players, but I also think Brock is playing at such a great level, man, that you're right. It's a marriage, but it's elite. It's elite play. It may not be the cream of the crop, the best we've ever seen, but it's the best in the league right now. And Brock's killing it. And I think, like you said originally, there's only a handful of players that I would want to replace Brock Purdy right now on this team. I just think it's all these players, but I think the problem I had with Cam Newton's comments is, like you said, he's not a game manager. He's making off script plays. He's throwing every ball like down the field, on the sidelines. Off script dumps off. He's scrambling. He's avoiding sack. He's avoiding pressure. He's seeing things that a lot of guys want to see that I'm pretty sure Sam Darnold want to see. And although I think Sam Darnold, let's say Sam Darnold started this whole season, they'd probably have 11 wins to finish the year, 11, 12 wins probably. They could probably still do that with Sam Darnold. But by the fashion of which they're winning, I think there'd be a lot more turnovers. These games would be a lot tighter, a lot closer, and I wouldn't have that much confidence going into the Super Bowl like I do right now with Brock Purdy. And I want to get your take before we wrap up here, everything I just said. And shout out to Kevin real quick. Kevin says, "Go Niners, one game at a time." Thanks for being a member, buddy. I appreciate it. Go ahead.
We definitely can't overlook no more teams and look down the schedules no more. But I agree with you. I agree with you, especially with the Sam Darnold point, because even as much as Kyle praised Sam Darnold, and we know Sam Darnold can sling the rock, Sam Darnold is not as great as Brock is. Sam Darnold, to me, is not even as close. Like, it's not close with the underneath timing. Like, that's the thing. I believe more in Sam Darnold's down the field, anywhere down the field, the middle, the sideline, the hashes. I believe in Sam's arm more than Brock's. But in order to get those, those are the things that make this marriage with Brock elite, because Brock is able to boom, get it out and force the defense to press up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I totally agree. Brock Purdy is not a game manager. He does aid Kyle in opening up everything. My pushback is number one, it's unfair for us to keep, putting this stuff on Brock, because the team don't care. Like, we do it because it's cool for us as fans to go back and forth about these things.
Mm-hmm.
If we're being totally honest, and this is for me, I'm being totally honest. If the team wasn't as stacked as it was, I don't think Brock would fail, but to me, he wouldn't look elite.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, good news for him and all of us is he does have these weapons, so we don't have to,
we got him in this situation, and that's the thing that we should relish it.
Yeah, man, and that's why I'm confident in this season, man. I feel like this is the most complete team that we've seen in a long time. One thing I want to say, man, is what I've enjoyed about this conversation with you today is, even though we might not necessarily disagree, but we have different views of things, right? Neither one of us get emotionally sensitive about it. So let this be an example to some people out there who do get emotionally sensitive. Some of them are in the chat. You're personally insulting people because they have different opinions about sports. All we're here to do is have a good time, having a discussion, keep this discussion going so people can listen to it and form their own opinions and viewpoints. And it's not something that should be an emotional reaction to get you angry about. Go ahead.
Not even just that, but I also, and like you said, it's not too much that we don't we're not eye to eye on. But even the fact that we aren't eye to eye on certain aspects of Brock and complimenting the team and who elevates and so forth and so on, we've sat and listened to each other and not just already have in our head, nope, this is how I feel, I don't care what he says. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We take if you take the opportunity to listen to a message fully and digest it, it can open your eyes up to some things.
Listen to understand, not to you're trying to listen to understand. Yeah.
You're supposed to listen to understand and not hear to reply.
Yeah, that's it, right? A lot of people just get dug in, and so for those, I'm not even gonna point you out, but if you get emotionally reactive to this stuff and you want to insult people personally because they differ on a football opinion, I think you really need to take a deep look in the mirror and check yourself, because it ain't that serious. We're all here for a good time. Football is entertainment.
And I'll also tell y'all that, because I always give out this invitation. I'm in Brooklyn. I travel to San Francisco. I travel to California. I travel to Inglewood. I travel to Compton. If you want to catch me at a Niners game, you want to catch me at a tailgate, and then say that, and I don't care if you 6'1", I don't care if you 6'2", I don't care if you X amount of pounds. I was in Rollway State Prison for 6 years. For 6 years.
It ain't even that serious either. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm not saying that. Yeah. I'm just saying, be careful, because you never know. Like, as large as this world is, you never know who you're gonna bump into.
Yeah, I think people just in general just need to be respectful and not take it that serious, man. We're all adults here. It's dumb, but I will say I really appreciated you coming on the show, man. I always enjoy the conversations. You're good at it, man. So maybe we'll get you back on again. I know this is your second time. We'll get you back on a third time another point of this season.
Absolutely. I'm a text a call away.
Yeah, man. Well, right on, brother. I appreciate.
Just follow the channel, subscribe to Ryan, follow him on X. If you need to buy a house, my guy is a mortgage broker, real estate agent. If you need some solar panels, holla at your boy. He got all that, man. He got anything you need to get your foundation right.
Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'm back on tomorrow with the coach. I'm not sure about the time. Hopefully 9 a.m., but we'll see.
I
Be back
love.
on tomorrow.
I
Yeah, the
can't
coach is awesome.
catch Coach on like a call-in show or something because I the same thing. Me and Coach see eye to eye on so much, but I would love to dive into the things that we don't, we're not here with because the coach is extremely intelligent. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you shouted out your sponsor, but close it out with that. Get that bread.
Yeah, no, we hit him in the beginning, man. So I appreciate it. Mr. Blue Magic, thank you for coming on, man. I'm gonna run this outro. I'll be back on tomorrow with Coach. Right on. You guys have a great day. Thank you very much.